is our 6th meeting here. So this is our Make Change Monday event that the Parent Safety Advocacy Group has been holding. Every one of us is going to start by telling you our name and the spelling. I'm Steve Katsaros, Katsaros. To my fellow speakers, remember to hear that. It really helps the guys on the floor. We've talked a lot about the Thatcher Memorial Fountain, but how blessed were we today to have water in it? It actually makes sense as a fountain. We've talked that there are 3 virtues that built our great state. That sculpture at the very top represents the state of Colorado, and it's built by on the virtues of loyalty, learning, and love. But I think that we learned something today in that now we have the fountain that's actually running. And to me, that water right there is it brings joy, right? Remember being a kid playing in the water, how much fun it is. So we learned a lot from Ms. Newsom last week about joy. We'll probably hear a little bit more about that. But without the foundation that this fountain is built on, the granite and marble that exists, that represents safety in our conversation, you can't get to joy. You might have small moments of it, but not a sustaining tide of joy. There's a eulogy that's on Thatcher's, at his gravesite, all the way over at Fairmont. And it reads, it's a Shakespeare quote, "We are such stuff as dreams are made on." When we think about dreams, when we think about what we are accomplishing in raising our kids, and we think about a man who endowed this to the state of Colorado, who lived to be 80 years old, yet there's a boy that's in that same cemetery who died a few hundred yards from here, who only made it to be 16 because of our failures as society, as a community. So when we think about what we want, I want to see people living to be 80 years old and not dying at 16. Back to East High School right here. March 22nd was a dream, but it wasn't the kind of dream that I think Shakespeare was talking about. It was probably polar opposite. And only a few people know what happened on that horrible day. The Parent Safety Advocacy Group, P-SAG, is so honored to have created a safe space for all of us to have these conversations, as challenging as they are, to welcome in people with different opinions that we don't agree on, people that have thoughts that line closer to us. But we've created this space, and we've demanded change of the entire DPS system, not singling out any one elected official, any one hired person, any group. We are the parents. We are demanding safety. So we've been making demands. All of those are in these sheets right here. We're happy to email them to you, east80206@gmail.com. And with that, I'm going to invite Theresa Peña up to tell us what our first of this week. We have a new demand or request. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Theresa Peña, P-E-N-A. I'm a former DPS parent, a graduate, and former president of the DPS Board of Education. This is the second time I've spoke. This is our 6th press conference. And I'm angry, I'm pissed, I'm outraged, and I'm tired. I am angry at the leadership of Denver Public Schools that they have been talking about safety, and we just got the first draft a week ago. I am tired. I am saddened that we are not here today talking about achievement for our children. Less than half of our 3rd graders can read at grade level. Less than half of our 3rd graders are low-income kids, are children of color, are Latino and Black kids. They're not even doing math at 50%. They're like at 20%. I'm exhausted with this school district right now. So P-SAG has assembled a group of our experts. They are parents, they are community members, staff, and they are alums. They are people who have been touched by gun violence, not just at this campus, but all over DPS. I am pissed. So P-SAG has assembled a set of recommendations regarding the discipline matrix, the discipline policy, and the discipline ladder. It was a policy that was passed in October of 2021. It's been a while. So as it relates to student discipline policy, we have 2 recommendations. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. So our team looked at 4 different school districts and we found policies that we think would be a much better match for the community in DPS. We particularly liked what was in Littleton Public Schools. So we would recommend, number 1, that the district take a look at the LPS. And it's a student code of conduct. It's not student discipline. DPS has a student discipline, JK. We would say, like, fine, whatever. But look at the student code of conduct at LPS. At a minimum, if DPS decides not to change that, they need to look at the discipline policy and address weapons, drug and alcohol, and student conduct involving violent and aggressive behavior. P-SAG has also reached out to the Attorney General's office to ask them to give us, to hold a community meeting. All of us could attend, and we have 2 questions. What are best practices? Don't reinvent the wheel, DPS. Take the best practices from other school districts and implement them. We don't need to keep talking about this or thinking about it or hiring experts. Let's just get this done. And the second request is, does the DPS student discipline policy actually comply with the Safe School Act? So we're hoping to hear back from the AG's office in the next few weeks. As it relates to the discipline matrix, maybe many of you have not even heard of this. It's pretty complicated. There's a policy, there's a matrix, there's a ladder. We have 5 recommendations for the discipline matrix. We recommend that if they don't incorporate a full kind of redo of the discipline policy like LPS, that they make the following changes. That they look at mandatory expulsion for students who carry firearms onto school campus, or there's evidence that they've had firearms, dangerous weapons outside of school. We require a mandatory expulsion hearing for any Type 5 violation. Type 5 violations are robbery, sexual assault, first and second assault, and arson. No, arson is 4. Training is a big issue, and we have heard this from the surveys that the district relieves. So DSLA is the Denver School Leaders Association. The deans had a meeting in April, and then we all got to fill out surveys, parents, students, and community. Many of these recommendations were shared by those other organizations. Training was probably the number 1 or number 2. We would recommend a complete overhaul of training on the policy, ladder, and matrix for any school personnel who are dealing with this in their environment. And secondly, we need to track and report data. The lack of transparency is appalling. The fact that we can't even find out the number of students that require pat-downs in our school, and we're asking parents to send their babies to these schools where we have people that we don't even know if they should be in a general. We're not suggesting those kids don't deserve an academic opportunity. They absolutely do. And they probably have such terrible trauma that they need to be in a place where they could be safe and learn. That is not going to be the comprehensive high schools. And the 5th one is a complete overhaul of the expulsion process. Right now, there is an individual person who we don't even know how this person is selected. We would recommend that there's standards and rubrics. We'd recommend that there is a process for appeal. And we would absolutely recommend that there is a collaborative process so that when the expulsion hearings are held, one person does not hold the fate of a student that's accused and the 2,000 students that child may go to school with. There has to be an appeals process for both the student who might be expelled as well as for the school where that child might be remanded. As it relates to the discipline ladder, 5 recommendations. Eliminate the matrix and the ladder and incorporate that into the policy. If that's not sufficient, much of the information that's in the ladder should probably be in school handbooks. This is something teachers should have so that they know, so it doesn't have to get to a level 5. We need improvements in training, we need improvements in restorative justice practices, and we need tracking and reporting. So any violations of 2, 3, or 4 should be reported. They should be reported to the board, and they should be reported to this community of parents who send their babies to school every day thinking they're going to be safe. The last one is really just a plea. So the district leadership has hired experts, they've hired other people. We assembled a group of 30 people, school staff, alum, and parents. We went through an exhaustive review of other policies, the DPS policy, the ladder, and the matrix. There is significant opportunity to improve. We could overhaul it or we could improve it. Take your pick, but we would suggest, and we've handed out these recommendations, we'll be sending these to the superintendent, the board, and to the teams responsible for doing the safety recommendation version 2.0.
Thank you, Theresa. Vernon Jones Jr., Jones Jr., executive partner of FaithBridge. The other request that we have this week that we need to put before you before we have our special guests come and share today is the P-SAG is requesting the DPS push for high quality and quality data around safety, matrix, and community feedback. Specifically, there must be a statistical significant percentages of a response rate and a new gathering process to get valid safety data. And so in other words, what we're saying, 4%, 7%, 8% return is not the voice of community. We want to challenge the district to make sure that it is effectively executing outreach to communities to make sure that we are actually hearing from a majority of our community. That's going to require folks to sweat, do work that it hasn't done before, and to make sure that we are actually talking to community, actually talking to staff. You know, we were using an example that when a school has to go get reviewed for their innovation renewal, they've got to talk to 60% of their staff. There's no cutting around that. They're making a big decision that will impact the lives of the people in that building, and they have to get 60% response. So if the district is making big plans around safety, if the district is making big plans around budget, they too should have to prove to us that they've actually talked to us. So that's another demand. The last demand is we want to talk about this budget. Currently, the district is in its budget cycle, and we've read and there's going to be $9 million more allocated to safety. And while that $9 million may sound like a lot of money, when you divide that across the number of schools in the district, that's about $43,000 per school. That is not an equitable amount to meet the needs of safety at our schools. So we need to be looking at the numbers. We need to be making sure that those who are responsible for the budget, our board and our superintendent, are truly making sure the budget reflects the vision of our district, the voices of parents, the voices of students, and the voices of staff. So those are the other demands that we have this week. We look forward to hearing from our superintendent. We look forward to hearing from our board of directors to ensure that we are moving in a direction that is truly about all students thriving. We're also honored today to be here to have a little bit of joy. Last week, Cletus talked to us about joy just robbed from us. And when you can stand in a space, as Brother Jeff said earlier on the show, when you can just stand in a space and shake somebody's hand who's not supposed to be there with you, there's a bit of joy that you have. And so when we get the chance to hear the story of Dean Mason, his lived experience today, there is a bit of joy in our hearts because he is here, he's alive, he is healing, he is with us. And so it's our honor to have him with us today. I'm going to have Cletus to come up to give you a little bit more of an appropriate introduction of her brother, and then we'll hear from Wayne.
My apologies for my emotions. I will try not to have them today, but I doubt that that will happen. Couple of things. One board member, Tay Anderson, is here today. Deputy Chief of Staff is here. No superintendent, no other board members, no other cabinet members. The decent thing to do is to come out and do the right thing. Even if it is whatever's going to litigation, he could have done that. I want to give shout out and kudos to the folks that took care of my brother when he was brought in. They came today. The first thing they said is, your brother has a guardian angel. And I said, yeah, he does. I said, but there's three types of people that God likes, or that, one, there's a person that God loves, right? There's a person that God likes, there's me, the person that God doesn't know what to do with. God not only likes my brother, but he loves him. So
Thank you. It's a bit overwhelming, but we'll get through this. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank my family, who has just been amazing, my friends, my church, the staff at East High School, and especially the students. The students are what kept me getting up at whatever hour of the morning, getting to school at 5:45 to just make sure that everything was ready for them to come on in and bother me that whole day. I'm very grateful to be here. You know, just want to correct my sister. God loves everybody.
he does.
So that is my testimony. I am a child of God. I love God. I start my day off every morning praying and reading my Bible and getting that. That's how my day starts. And that gives me strength to make it through that day. I have a few things that I want to say today. Yesterday, my pastor preached a sermon called Better Than Before. And I thought that was appropriate. Better than before. And that's what we're here for right now, is we want to make sure that things are better than they were before. And the only way we can do that is that we have to come together as a community. One of the things he said in his sermon was, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." The moment Austin pulled that trigger, I forgave him. The regret that I have right now is that he is not here for me to tell him that. And I wish he was. And I just want his parents to know that I do forgive Austin for what happened that day. There have been a lot of rumors going around that I have said certain things that I haven't. This is my first statement to anybody other than family and friends about what happened that day, and I will discuss what happened that day. But there was a rumor that I was speaking to the superintendent, and I told the superintendent and the chief human resources officer that I was in good spirits and ready to go back to work. I have spoken to the superintendent one time, and that was the day that I got shot. He came into the hospital. After that, I haven't heard from the superintendent. I've had 3 contacts with people who are in authority over me. From the administration office, Principal Walker has called me once. Other than that, I haven't had any contact with anybody in those positions. The school staff has reached out to me. The students have reached out to me, and I am very appreciative of that. One thing that really bothers me is that my friend, Eric Sinclair, should have never been put in that position. And I will explain my side of what happened, and hopefully one day Eric can explain to you his side of what happened. But one thing that happened prior to Eric and I being shot was another student saw Austin in class with a firearm, reported it to staff. They brought Austin down to search him. Austin ran out of the school. That is the biggest red flag there. And then he was allowed back into the school. I read this flyer or whatever this thing is that went around talking about if it doesn't happen on school property, students should be allowed back into school. If that's the case, then we should have had armed safety patrol there every morning that Austin came into the school, because we knew his history. Everybody here knows his history. They should have met Austin at the door with a show of force and saying, okay, we're going to search you. Maybe, just maybe, that would have stopped that behavior. We don't know. But just maybe that would have stopped it, because he would have known that he was going to get searched every time he walked into school. Eric and I did not search Austin. That morning, Austin walked into the school. I was at the front desk. Austin came in. He asked for one of our assistant principals, the AP. I called the AP on the radio. The AP didn't answer. And we had an assembly going on at the time, so it was chaotic in the school. Eric came up, and Eric said, I will take him back. Eric took Austin back into room 129, our office. Eric called for the AP again. The AP didn't answer. Eric called for safety. The safety officers didn't answer. Shortly after that, Eric was yelling in the radio, Wayne, Wayne, help me, help me. I knew what was going on. I knew the situation. It had to be what I thought it was going to be. I ran back to 129, opened the door. Eric and Austin were wrestling. I grabbed Austin, and Eric said, gun, gun. Austin fired off some shots, I think 2 or 3 shots. And then I grabbed Austin's arm. And when I had his arm, and I saw Eric go down, I had his arm, Austin turned his wrist toward me, and he fired 2 shots, and he hit me. And Austin broke away from me, and he stood there staring at Eric and I, still pointing the gun at us. And then he ran out of the room. I grabbed some towels, and I lifted up Eric's shirt. I saw Eric's wound. I started to put pressure on the wound. I looked at his leg, and he was bleeding really bad. And it is by the grace of God, I truly believe that the paramedics were one room over, literally one room over. And they came into the room. Kamari Perkins came into the room, and they said, where's the shooter? And I said, he ran out of here. They moved me out the way. They started to work on Eric. I sat back, and I just started praying. And I was holding Eric's hand. And then I just said, I'm hit too. And the paramedics started to work on me, and then they got us out of there. It's hard to go through that story again and again, but I'm thankful that my friend is okay. I'm sad that my friend had to go through that there should have been procedures put in place, that he did not have to be alone with Austin, but he was. Eric never did a pat down of Austin, and Eric will tell you his side of the story. And that's what happened on March 22nd of this year. Do I got anything else I want to say? We have to be better. Our administration has to be better. This safety plan that they are pushing for a response from the community, from the schools. What if the safety plan recommends metal detectors? Do we talk about a budget then? What if they recommend that we have SROs in the school? These are things that could prevent school violence. I believe, as a victim of school violence, I believe that there were things that we left on the table that should have been taken care of, but weren't. To the seniors, to the students of East High School, they rock. They are the best. They are my heart. And I want the seniors to be able to go to prom, to graduate, to go to college, and to enjoy life. Because essentially we are in a pandemic that we're in a pandemic that doesn't require a face mask. We're in a pandemic that is led by fear, that is led by doubt, and it is violence in our schools and in our community and in our country. So that's all I have. I appreciate everybody listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Wayne for his truth. I want to thank Wayne for sharing a bit of his life with us and reminding us that we have to be better. It's not optional. We have to be better. And so as we look as parents, as we look as education leaders, as we look as a community into what tomorrow looks like, tomorrow looks better if we start doing the work today. We can't sit back idle and wait for somebody else to do it. It's on us. That is at the core of P-SAG, and that is the core of our push, that as community, we have to determine the tomorrow that we want, and we have to go get it. So we're going to open it up for a few questions. Again, we want to be respectful of people's time, and so we'll be brief. So if you don't get picked, don't be mad. We'll get you next time. Brother Jeff, do you have a question you want to start with Wayne?
I just would wonder what what are some other myths that you would like to dispel or questions that you have?
I just want people to understand the role of a dean. We were shorthanded in the dean's office. We had a dean who took a promotion in an AP position at another school. And so that left us with 3 deans. And then we had people who were assigned to work the front door and the back door. And we had people quit those positions. And so they had the deans working the front door and the back door. And we have 3 deans with 2,500 students. It's impossible because at any given time, you have a dean at the front door and maybe at the back door. So that leaves 1 dean to perform the duties of a dean. And it just can't be done. And so, I don't know, I just think that them not filling that position of dean and having us go through the primarily the whole school year without that position and then putting us at doors, that was not effective because that could have also prevented Eric from being alone in that room because he was the only dean that was available. So
What's the role of police officers? Because they say they won't do pat downs, they won't do, they don't want to be there to do ticketing. What is the role of the police officers inside of the building?
I was in the Navy for 8 years and I was on an aircraft carrier. And whenever something went down, the president asked, "Where are the carriers?" And it was just a show of force. It was so people would know where they were. If the police officers are in the school, they know that they're there.
Padilla?
What gaps do you have in your healing journey? And if there are gaps, how can community pour into you? And how do we get those resources to you?
I really don't have gaps. I have an amazing family. I have an amazing church. My friends are there for me. And so those gaps are filled just because of the love that I'm receiving from that part of my community. And so I'm appreciative of people who are reaching out. And I have had a lot of lunches since this happened where people want to go and have lunch. But I appreciate that as well. But, I have the support that I need. I'm doing the things that DPS has required me to do. And so I'm taking care of that end of it.
And sister, does family have what you all need as well? And if not, how can we pour into you all as you pour into him?
Yeah, I think just continue praying. I think I haven't stopped shaking them since that day. And I think we're okay.
First off, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank
Do you mind just sharing how you feel about your colleagues performing daily pat downs, not just at East, but at all schools? What's your feeling about these daily pat down routines?
Deans are not trained to do daily pat downs. I was a federal probation officer for 20 years, retired, and I was trained to do pat downs. And when you do pat downs, you put that person at a disadvantage. And so some of the pat downs that I have seen at East High School are just casual.
Yeah.
And so that's not the proper way to do a pat down.
Who should be doing the pat downs?
I believe it's our safety officers, the patrol. And I have seen them do pat downs, and they do a great job of pat downs. And these are the armed safety patrol officers. And so they're trained to do that. And they patrol the areas and stuff. So if ever there is a need to do a pat down, then we should be calling them to come in and do that pat down.
Thank you. We'll take a couple more.
Yeah, would you mind clarifying, when you said another student saw Austin with a gun, was that on that same day?
No, ma'am.
No.
It was weeks before, just 2 or 3 weeks prior to that.
Okay, and then, thank you. And then, other Dean Eric was the one, I guess with Austin, was an assistant principal supposed to be the one doing the pat down? I was a little confused about that.
And so am I.
Okay.
I don't know the procedure because I wasn't a part of any of that. But when I had spoken to one of the safety officers that was assigned to East, he said that they were the ones who should be doing the pat downs, just in case you do find a firearm or a weapon or drugs or something of that nature.
The safety officer should be.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. And then I'll come in.
Another clarification question
about that morning. So when Mr. Sinclair took Austin into that office, was the intent then to wait for somebody who was equipped to do the pat down, and then, as you mentioned, you just weren't getting that response?
Yeah, he was calling for assistance, and Eric will have to tell you that part of the scenario. But he was calling for assistance over the radio, and nobody was responding. So and that's when he and Austin kind of started Austin got aggressive.
Okay. And then another question: have you considered a lawsuit?
I can't
No
discuss
response.
that. Yeah. Sorry.
Last question up front.
People that you said saved your life.
I'm sorry.
Who were the people that you said saved your life?
Oh, Nurse Fun and Danny.
You come up here.
They were the paramedics.
They're the work in the nurse's office.
You want to tell them who you are?
They were the ones that treated.
Hi, my name is Brian Fun. I'm the school nurse at East High School.
My name is Daniela Gonzalez. I'm one of the athletic trainers at East High School, and I also work as a health tech in the nurse's office.
So you two treated
Yes.
there in Mason. You were next door.
Yes.
So we were first on the scene. After that, the paramedics arrived to help us.
Can you describe what you saw?
It happened in the office right next door to ours.
Could you describe what you saw?
We were in the nursing office. All I heard was the gunshots go off. I ran next door. When I ran next door, I ran in with campus security. And then I saw Wayne and Eric on the ground. And at that point, I ran back to the nurse's office, grabbed our emergency kit, grabbed Brian, and we ran back in and helped treat until paramedics deemed it was safe for them to go inside.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask Wayne, you see many students in schools with a lot of trauma and a lot of needs. What do you think a student like Austin, should they be in comprehensive high schools, or do you think they should be in another place?
Oh, that's a hard one to answer. I think with the appropriate plan in place, that maybe we can have students who have those type of issues in school. But we have to be consistent with whatever plan we come up with, and I think it has to be known throughout the faculty that this is how we handle this situation or this individual.
Thank you all for being this afternoon. Can we just give a hand to these first responders? And I want to challenge us all again with Wayne's words. Let's go and be better. Not just stick where we are, but let's go and be better together. All right. Thank you all for being here this afternoon.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
you.
Sir. I appreciate
Appreciate you. Yeah, thank you.
And,
Thank you.